Hi, kids. Welcome to another episode of Bedtime Bible Stories with Jamam. We're starting chapter 7, The Time of the Judges, page 75. I'm wearing matching luggage today. I feel kind of tired from my travels, but it is bedtime, so I'm allowed to look a little worn out. So here we go. Israel's failure and God's faithfulness. You're going to get not a great view of me, but hopefully I won't mess it up. There we go. Joshua's generation and the following generation, who had witnessed God's miraculous power in delivering them from Egypt and possessing the promised land, continued to worship the Lord. The subsequent generation, though, did evil. They worshipped images of Baal and Asherah and other gods of the people they had not driven out of the land. Their apostasy made the Lord so angry, he actually helped their enemies defeat them. Every time Israel fought against an aggressor, the Lord fought against his own people to defeat them, just as he had sworn he would do. The situation was dreadful. Even so, God had compassion for Israel and raised up judges, which are charismatic leaders in this situation, to rescue them from their oppressors. God would help them while the judge was alive, but as soon as the judge died, the people were so stubborn and evil that they would lapse back into the sin of worshiping other gods. This made God furious because they broke the covenant the Lord had made with their ancestors. God did not help them drive out the nations Joshua had not conquered. Israel's failure was also an opportunity. The Lord said, I will use these pagan nations to test Israel and find out if they will follow me. The presence of idolaters in the land forced God's people to choose between him and the gods of the Canaanites. To survive the hostile environment of the ancient world, Israel also needed to develop skills for war. Fighting against Canaanites helped Israel gain valuable military experience. Unfortunately, as God had warned, his people intermarried with the people left in the land, and this led to the worship of their gods. Early leaders. The entire period of history was characterized by the recurring theme of blatant apostasy, cruel oppression, and merciful deliverance. From the people's perspective, what they needed was a king. Though they repeatedly asked, God did not give them one. Instead, he raised up military leaders, judges, to rescue them from oppressors. Despite God's mercy, though, the people quickly abandoned him. God would allow their enemies to enslave them, and when they cry out again for help, God would answer by raising up another judge. This downward spiral of spiritual and military failure, followed by deliverance, was repeated over and over again. Because the Israelites worshipped Baal and Asherah, God helped the king of Aram enslave them. When they pleaded for help, the Lord sent Othniel, an ideal judge. I probably said that wrong. Othniel. How about Othniel was an ideal judge? The Spirit of the Lord strengthened Othniel, and he defeated Aram. As they were set free, Israel enjoyed peace for 40 years. When Israel sinned again, 3 nations east of the Jordan River invaded and captured the hill country of Ephraim and Benjamin. God responded to Israel's pleas for rescue by sending Ehud, I'm sure I said that one wrong, who was a left-handed judge. I also am left-handed and sometimes judgy. Ehud brought a double-edged dagger with him when he went to pay tribute to Eglon, king of Moabi. After paying, Ehud told the king that he had a secret message. The king agreed to meet Ehud privately in an upstairs room. When they were alone, Ehud stabbed Eglon, but couldn't pull the dagger out. It was so deeply embedded in Eglon's stomach that the handle disappeared in the fat. Ehud escaped and sounded the call to arms. The tribe of Benjamin mobilized for war. Ehud told the people to follow him because the Lord has granted victory. The Israelites defeated the Moabites and enjoyed peace for 80 years. Though little is known about the judge named Shamgar, he killed 600 Philistines with a metal spike from an ox cart. When Ehud died, Israel sinned again. So the Lord handed them over to Jabin, a Canaanite king. Sisera, general of Jabin's army, commanded a force of 900 iron chariots. Through overwhelming military advantage, I feel like I'm struggling tonight. Okay, I'm going to start that sentence over. Through overwhelming military advantage, the Canaanites brutally oppressed Israel for 20 years. This time, God used a woman to deliver them. Deborah was ministering as a prophetess, and also judging Israel, which again means leading. She summoned Barak, promising the Lord would give him victory. Now I want to say Barak was unwilling to lead the army unless Deborah went with him. She agreed, but told Barak he would not receive any honor for the victory. Barak put together an army of 10,000 from his tribe of Naphtali, and the tribe of Zebulun. This is kind of challenging today. When Barak attacked Sisera, the Lord helped Israel by flooding the Kishon River. Because their chariots were immobilized by the mud, the Canaanites panicked. Barak routed Sisera's army, and no one escaped except Sisera. Sisera fled to the tent of Jael, a woman who pretended to offer him hospitality. After drinking warm milk, Sisera fell asleep in what he thought was safety. However, this woman grabbed a tent peg and a hammer and drove the peg through Sisera's temple. Okay, now we're talking about Gideon. Israel enjoyed 40 years of peace until attacked by marauding bands of Midianites. Midianites would wait until the Israelites planted crops, and then they made surprise raids, stole livestock, and trampled fertile fields with their camels. These seasonal attacks continued until Israel was devastated and cried out to the Lord. God had compassion on his people and sent the angel of the Lord to Gideon, who was threshing wheat in an abandoned wine press. The angel called to Gideon, "Mighty warrior, the Lord is with you." Gideon, dumbfounded, asked, "If so, why have we been oppressed by our enemies? Why haven't we seen miracles? And where is the Lord who brought us out of Egypt?" The angel assured Gideon he would help him. Still, Gideon protested, "How can I rescue Israel? I'm a wimp from the smallest clan and the weakest tribe." Promised a second time the Lord would help him destroy the Midianites, Gideon asked for proof that the Lord was on his side and told the angel to wait until he returned with an offering. Gideon rushed home to bring the meat and bread. The angel of the Lord touched Gideon's offering with his staff, and he erupted into flames. Then, as suddenly as the Lord had appeared, he was gone. Gideon was terrified when he realized he had been speaking to the sovereign Lord. The Lord assured Gideon he would not die. Gideon built an altar and named it Yahweh Shalom, which means the Lord is peace. That night, the Lord instructed Gideon to make a second sacrifice and use the wood from the community's altar as fuel. Gideon offered the sacrifice with 10 of his servants. The next morning, when the people of the town discovered he had destroyed the altar to Baal, they planned to execute him, but Gideon's father defended his son. He mocked them, saying, "If Baal is truly God, let him defend himself." This courageous and defiant act earned Gideon the title Jerubbaal, which meant "let Baal defend himself." When nomadic armies occupied the valley of Jezreel in northern Israel, west of the Sea of Galilee, Gideon sounded a call to arms. Though thousands responded, he still had doubts. He asked God to prove that he would help defeat the coalition. Gideon placed lamb's wool on the threshing floor at night and asked the Lord to make it wet with dew and the ground around it dry. The next morning, when Gideon squeezed the fleece, it was saturated with water and the ground was dry. That was still not enough. Gideon asked for God to do the opposite the next night. God complied. When Gideon recruited an army of 32,000 soldiers, the Lord said he had too many. If you defeat the Midianites with such a large force, the Israelites will boast they saved themselves. He ordered Gideon to send everyone home who was afraid. 22,000 departed. Then he reduced the army one more time, leaving Gideon with just 300 men. Gideon and a servant sneaked into the enemy camp at night. They heard soldiers talking about a dream that they would be defeated. This was enough for Gideon. He and his army attacked, blowing trumpets and shouting, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." The Midianites were so confused that they turned on each other in the darkness. Warriors from 3 other Israelite tribes pursued and killed both Midianite commanders. Though his men were exhausted, Gideon joined in pursuit of the other survivors. He caught the remnants of the army and captured the 2 Midianite kings. On his return from the battle, Gideon punished the elders of Succoth and executed the men of Peniel because both cities had refused to give his men food while pursuing the Midianites. When Gideon ordered his oldest son to kill the Midianite kings, he refused. So Gideon killed them himself and took their royal necklaces. Gideon's victory was so inspiring that the Israelites wanted to make him king. Gideon refused, but asked each of the elders to give him an earring from the plunder. Gideon used the gold to make a sacred idol, which he set up as an altar in his hometown. The people worshiped the idol. Even Gideon and his family were enticed to worship it. After the defeat of the Midianites, Israel lived in peace for 40 years. Gideon had 70 sons by multiple wives. That man was getting with it. After his death, the Israelites worshipped Baal and forgot about Gideon's remarkable victory and all the good he had done. One of Gideon's sons, here we go, Abimelech, which means my father is king, conspired with the leaders of, and Nanny told me how to say this, Shechem. I think she said it was Shechem. I was calling it Shechem in previous videos. I think she said it was Shechem, to make himself king. Then he hired hitmen to kill all of Gideon's other sons. Only Jotham, Gideon's youngest, escaped. He denounced Abimelech and pronounced a curse on him. Abimelech ruled for 3 years, but then Shechem rebelled. When Gal, a stranger, offered to overthrow Abimelech, the people of Shechem placed their troops under Gal's command. The city commissioner tipped off Abimelech about the plot, and he set an ambush for Gal and his men. And most of the conspirators were killed. Abimelech massacred the people of Shechem, including 1,000 men and women who had taken refuge in the Tower of Shechem. Flushed with victory, Abimelech attacked the nearby city of Thebez, but his skull was crushed when a woman dropped a large millstone on his head. He was mortally wounded, and the next day he ordered one of his soldiers to kill him so he would not be humiliated at dying by the hand of a woman. Jotham's curse was fulfilled, and the men of Shechem were punished for their evil deeds. After the death of Abimelech, Israel spiraled further into spiritual and religious chaos. Tolar and Jair served as judges, but there was no peace under their leadership. Israel again worshipped pagan gods, yet this time their apostasy was different. They totally abandoned the Lord. The Lord's anger burned against his people, and for 15 years they were oppressed by the Philistines and Ammonites. Finally, in desperation, they cried out for help. The Lord, however, said, "Cry out to your new gods, let them rescue you." Israel confessed that they had sinned and pleaded fervently for help. When Ammonites invaded the country or the territory of Gilead, they said that they would follow the first person courageous enough to lead them in battle. Um, this is a tricky name. Jeff Jephthah. Ha. I have no idea. Jephthah. Jephthah. You guys, this is almost embarrassing. I mean, I'm sure I'll be more embarrassed later on when I mess up more things, but here we go. Jephthah was a great warrior, but he was illegitimate. Gilead's son by a prostitute. Gilead's other son by his wife despised Jephthah and forced him out of their family. He had left home and become the leader of gang outlaws, so the elders of Gilead appealed to him to lead them in fighting the Ammonites. Jephthah refused because of the way that he had been shunned, but he negotiated for a better offer. He said he would help if they made him ruler, not just a military commander. The elders agreed. When Jephthah tried to negotiate peace with the Ammonite king, the king ignored his message. The Lord inspired him with courage to strike the Ammonites, but Jephthah made a famously impulsive vow: "Whatever comes out of my house when I return in victory, I will sacrifice to the Lord." Jephthah crushed the Ammonites, yet when he returned victoriously, his daughter came out of his house, singing and rejoicing. Jephthah was beside himself. He cried out, "You've caused me disaster. I promised the Lord a sacrifice, and I must keep my vow." His daughter said, "Father, keep your vow, because the Lord has given you victory over the Ammonites." After she spent 2 months with her friends, Jephthah did as he had promised. It became a custom for the young women in Israel to commemorate Jephthah's daughter's courageous act of trust in the Lord. The victory over the Ammonites did not bring peace. When the tribe of Ephraim ridiculed the men of Gilead, Jephthah attacked and killed 42,000. 3 judges ruled Israel after Jephthah, but none of them were able to bring peace either. Israel remained trapped in their downward spiral of sin and oppression. We will talk about Samson next time because we are 17 minutes in, and I imagine with all of me stuttering and stammering around, I have probably lost your attention. I will try to do better the next time. I apologize for all my horrible mispronunciations, but having mom read you a story is still okay, right? Like, it doesn't really matter what I say, it's the sound of my voice, right? Even though you guys are probably grown or will be soon, and are old or will be soon. Um, this is me trying to instill good things in you and for you. So I love you and good night.